Hey, what's up guys? Eric here, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about whether or not David Zaslav at Warner Brothers is actually a real-life Lex Luthor. Yes, a lot of us joke about the fact that he's a supervillain. It's been the butt of the joke since this whole thing with Warner Brothers and Discovery happened, and there's been a lot of decisions where it feels like maybe there is some insidious supervillain team behind the scenes controlling Warner Brothers based on some of the decisions we've had recently. And certainly it's changed the landscape of streaming. We've seen a lot of streaming services sort of follow behind in the footsteps of David Zaslav. We're seeing it with Disney Plus. We're seeing it with Paramount Plus. A lot of these companies now are following in the footsteps of this real life supervillain. And you often wonder, like, what else could possibly happen? Well, a story came out. This was shared with me by a couple of people today about a GQ editor who basically has connections with Warner Brothers in production, and because of that, a story that some people would call maybe a hit piece on David Zaslav, but more of like an editorial expose, was basically yeeted from the website. And there's some details here. We're going to go through this, and then I'll stop and give my thoughts as we read a few bits of this article. So again, it says GQ editor who pulled critical David Zaslav story is producing a movie for Warner Brothers. It says here on July 3rd, GQ.com rolled out a hot take story titled How Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav Became Public Enemy #1 in Hollywood. The piece, which was written by freelance film critic Jason Bailey, it slammed David Zaslav as a Logan Roy-esque mogul, quickly disappeared from the GQ's website, while a new, more friendly version popped up with a separate URL. That version too vanished long after, leaving readers puzzled. So initially, it was out for a while, and then they made some changes to it. And I guess those changes were not up to standards for David Zaslav and Warner Brothers, based on what we're going to read here in a second. And so it got Thanos snapped. It's gone. It's disappeared from existence. I'm pretty sure it's the internet. Everything's forever on the internet, so I'm sure it's out there floating around. I'll probably do a little bit of digging here. We'll talk about it on Twitch at some point, I guess, or maybe I'll do a follow-up on it. But yeah, it's quite interesting. So why did that happen? Okay, so did a GQ editor's relationship with Warner Brothers play a role in softening and the ultimate removal of the story? GQ editor-in-chief Will Welch is producing a movie at Warner Brothers titled The Great Chinese Art Heist, which is based on a 2018 GQ article by Alex W. Palmer. John M. Chu, Crazy Rich Asians, is attached to direct and produce the film, which chronicles an audacious European museum crime wave that targeted Chinese antiquities. The project already has a script in place by Ken Chang, Jessica Gao, and Jimmy O. Yang. Sources say Welch was involved with the discussion surrounding the removal of Bailey's initial story and made the call to pull the revamped story, which ran some 500 words shorter than the published version, which, if you don't know, 500 words is quite a lot when it comes to a lot of the articles we see from, these different websites. It's quite a bit of words to be removed. Not letters, words. Those same sources say Warner Brothers Discovery complained about the initial story to two GQ editors, one of whom was Welch. So basically, they already didn't like the story, and then Welch is lined up to work for Warner Brothers, and then magically the story has disappeared. It doesn't really take much to put two and two together. It says here, representative for GQ said a piece published by GQ on Monday was not properly edited before going live. After a revision was published, the writer of the piece asked to have their byline removed, at which point GQ decided to unpublish the piece in question. GQ requests the editorial error that led to a story being published before it was ready. So that's their initial statement. It sounds like any typical, we're not going to give you a real answer. I mean, it's plausible, and that's kind of what PR does, is it gives you some sort of plausible deniability for anything. It says here, but a spokesperson for Warner Brothers Discovery offered a slightly different take, and this is where it's like, which one is real? The freelance reporter made no attempt to reach out to Warner Brothers to fact-check the substance of the piece before publishing, a standard practice for any reputable news outlet. As is also standard practice, we contacted the outlet and asked them numerous inaccuracies to be corrected. In the process of doing so, the editors ultimately decided to pull the piece. So, slightly different stories. So which one is true? It doesn't seem likely it's a combination of the two. It seems like one of the two happened. Either way, it doesn't look good, right? It says Welch's involvement in the decision-making process would constitute a conflict of interest. As a producer on a Warner Brothers movie in early development, Welch would meet the criteria from the Society of Professional Journalists Code of Ethics to say reporters and editors should avoid conflicts of interest, real or perceived, and disclose unavoidable conflicts. Furthermore, journalistic best practices dictate that stories never just disappear and that any significant corrections be noted with full transparency. As Warner Brothers Discovery sources say, no one at the corporate level was aware of Welch's ties to the movie studio. So that seems awful shady. So the people making the decisions or listening to him did not know he was producing a movie for Warner Brothers. And that seems like a huge issue, because not only is it a conflict of interest ethically, but it seems like it might have actually been an issue with the entire, everybody he was working with basically didn't know. So not only was he acting outside of ethics, he was also like hiding things from coworkers and people that work at his level. So that's quite interesting. It says here, Bailey declined to comment on Warner Brothers Discovery characterization of his work as containing multiple inaccuracies, that he never reached out to Zaslav for comment. So the guy that wrote the article is not really talking about it either, probably because of the fact that you know, maybe there's some sort of like a legal reason why. I'm not really sure 100%. I guess we'll have to get more information on that at a different time. But, you know, a lot of people accused Warner Brothers of doing some kind of shady stuff in terms of like with the Ezra Miller situation and how they were handled with the Flash movie and how a lot of the cases against Ezra sort of vanished or got dropped, or the people that were filing the charges got really quiet. And there's a lot of talk of whether or not Warner Brothers was actually sort of intervening there and doing something, you know, and people allege that maybe money had gone some direction for these people to be quiet. And again, these are all allegations. No one has any proof of anything. So there is a possibility that that could all just be speculation, but it doesn't help when stuff like this happens, because then it brings into question the credibility and just the general ethics and morals of the company. You have a GQ website offered a piece, an article, an editorial about David Zaslav, and then all of a sudden one of the editors for GQ is involved in the removal of that article, and then you find out that they're producing a movie for Warner Brothers, which is a direct connection to David Zaslav. It really does bring in some sort of like, is this actually good? Like, is this a good thing that they're able to do this? I will stand by the fact that I think David Zaslav's introduction into the entertainment world has been pretty awful. I think one or two things he said I actually can see and agree with. Everything else seems to be at the best interest of keeping all of the people at the table, keeping all their wallets packed full of money and bleeding all the actual creative people basically to death and not giving them anything. You know, this idea of tax write-downs, which ultimately I'm hoping that they investigate it and find out that it's illegal. They can't do that. So that it'll stop happening, you know, to not pay residuals and healthcare for people in the industry. And a lot of that started with David Zaslav's big move with Batgirl, and then other properties on HBO Max, which is now just Max. And so there's no love lost between me and David Zaslav when it comes to stuff. He is literally not a creative person. He's a businessman, and he doesn't think about anything but the money. And in a lot of ways, that's what people want CEOs to do. But from a creative standpoint, I find it to be quite egregious that he's willing to compromise art and integrity and ethics and morals simply to turn a dollar, in the most egregious ways. I mean, there's a way to make money, but you also should extend some of that good faith to the loyal viewers and people who have supported this content for so long. And he's not doing that. So for me, him being a real life Lex Luthor makes sense. I don't have much else to add to it. But that's where I'm going to wrap up this video. Again, we'll talk more about this, you know, in another video. Maybe we'll talk about it on Twitch or something like that. We'll see. Anyway, if you're watching this on Wednesday, I'll be later tonight doing my review for Secret Invasion. Episode 3 dropped today. It was a shorter episode, so we'll see if I don't know if I'm going to need the full 30 minutes to do the review. But if you're watching this on Wednesday, join me tonight here on YouTube for my Secret Invasion review. And we'll also talk about any possible Marvel news, and we'll do a little Q&A at the end. But give me your thoughts and opinions on this article. What do you think of David Zaslav and Warner Brothers? Is this super shady? Give me your thoughts and opinions, and I will see everyone later. Bye.